A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Good morning and welcome to a special edition of My Weird Prompts. I am Korn and joining me today is Herman. We are deviating from our usual format of exploring strange AI behaviors and digital oddities to bring you a critical situational report, or SITREP, regarding the rapidly escalating geopolitical and security developments in the Middle East. As of today, February 25, 2026, the region is seeing a level of military mobilization, economic volatility, and diplomatic tension that we have not witnessed in decades. Herman, you have been monitoring the intelligence feeds, open source intelligence, and news reports over the last 24 hours. This is not just a routine flare-up or a seasonal increase in rhetoric. We are looking at a highly coordinated movement of strategic assets and a very narrow window for diplomacy.
That is correct, Korn. The situation is moving with incredible speed, and the data points we are seeing across the board suggest a convergence toward a decisive moment. We are currently tracking what analysts call a coercive diplomacy peak. This is a state where military posturing is no longer just about signaling intent. It is being used to force a specific, immediate outcome at the negotiating table. However, the sheer scale of the forces involved, the sheer tonnage of naval vessels, and the number of fifth-generation airframes means that the margin for error is almost non-existent. Over the last 24 hours, we have seen significant movements from the United States, Israel, and Iran, alongside a major shift in the global energy market that is already hitting the pumps. We should start with the most visible sign of escalation, which is the massive United States air and naval buildup currently centering on Israel and the surrounding waters of the Eastern Mediterranean and the Arabian Sea.
Let us dive into those military movements, because the numbers are staggering. Reports from the Washington Post and Xinhua have confirmed that 12 United States F-22 Raptors stealth fighter jets arrived at Avda Air Base in southern Israel yesterday, February 24. Now, Herman, for our listeners who might not follow defense logistics closely, why is this specific deployment so significant compared to the usual presence of United States aircraft in the region? We have had F-15s and F-16s there for years.
The F-22 Raptor is a different beast entirely, Korn. It is a primary air superiority fighter with advanced stealth capabilities and an integrated sensor suite designed specifically to penetrate the most sophisticated air defense networks in the world. Networks like the S-300 or S-400 systems that Iran has been fortifying. By placing them at Avda Air Base, which is located in the southern part of Israel, the United States is positioning these assets within striking distance of regional targets while keeping them somewhat removed from the immediate northern border tensions where Hezbollah's shorter-range rocket fire is a constant threat. But the Raptors are just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The total United States aerial buildup in the region now involves over 150 combat aircraft. This includes F-35 Lightning IIs stationed at Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan and A-10 Warthogs moved into Al-Dhafra. Furthermore, the United States has placed B-2 Spirit stealth bombers on high alert back at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. These bombers are capable of reaching any point in the Middle East with a single refueling and carrying the Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MOP, which is designed for deeply buried targets. This suggests a readiness for a high-intensity multi-axis strike if the order is given.
And it is not just happening in the air. The naval component seems to be reaching a scale we have not seen since the early 2000s. What can you tell us about the carrier strike groups and the specific vessels involved?
This is perhaps the most significant indicator of intent, Korn. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group has reached the Mediterranean and is currently near Suda Bay, Crete. It is transiting at high speed to join the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is already operating in the Arabian Sea. Having two carrier strike groups in such close proximity provides the United States and its allies with an enormous amount of redundant firepower, electronic warfare capabilities, and 24-hour surveillance. We are talking about nearly 150 carrier-based aircraft, plus the hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles carried by the accompanying destroyers and cruisers. This represents the largest United States naval concentration in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. When you combine this with the reports that the United States has begun evacuating non-essential personnel and military dependents from bases in Qatar and Bahrain due to heightened Iranian missile threats, it becomes clear that the Pentagon is moving beyond deterrence. They are preparing for the possibility of a direct kinetic exchange.
While the United States and Israel are reinforcing their positions, Iran is certainly not standing still. They have launched what they are calling the 1404 Combined Exercise. Herman, what does this hybrid drill involve, and what message is Tehran trying to send to the Ford and the Lincoln?
The 1404 Combined Exercise is a massive show of force being conducted by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Ground Forces, or IRGC, along the Persian Gulf Coast and various strategic islands like Abu Musa and the Tombs. According to the Fars News Agency and the Tehran Times, this involves a combination of mobile missile units, massive drone swarms, and naval special forces. The primary focus is on what military planners call anti-access and area denial operations, or A2AD. Essentially, Iran is simulating how it would prevent an enemy landing or a naval incursion into its territorial waters. They are heavily utilizing Resvan loitering munitions and the well-known Shahed 136 drones, which we have seen used extensively in other global conflicts. These exercises are a direct response to the United States naval buildup. By conducting these drills now, Iran is demonstrating that it has the capability to harass shipping, target naval assets, and effectively close the Strait of Hormuz, which is the world's most critical choke point for oil.
That brings us to the immediate economic impact, which is where the average person is feeling this tension first. We saw oil prices surge yesterday. Brent crude is now rising towards $72 a barrel, which is a significant jump in a very short window. This seems to be tied directly to those reports of partial closures in the Strait of Hormuz. How are the global markets reacting to these Iranian naval exercises?
The markets are extremely jittery. Reuters and Sada News have confirmed that Iran temporarily closed parts of the Strait of Hormuz to facilitate these naval drills. Even a temporary closure of a few hours sends shockwaves through the global economy because about 20% of the world's liquid petroleum passes through that narrow waterway. Brent crude rose 7% in a single day because traders are now pricing in the high risk of a full-scale military conflict. It is not just the price of oil, though. The Baltic Dirty Tanker Index, which measures the cost of shipping crude oil on unrefined tankers, is at a 3-year high. Insurance premiums for any vessel transiting the Persian Gulf have spiked by an estimated 15 to 20% in just the last 48 hours. Shipping companies are starting to weigh the cost of rerouting tankers around the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa. That reroute adds weeks to delivery times and thousands of miles to the journey, which would further drive up global inflation and disrupt just-in-time supply chains for everything from gasoline to plastics.
So we have a massive military buildup and a growing economic crisis. Meanwhile, on the ground, the situation between Israel and its neighbors remains incredibly volatile. There was a specific incident involving the Lebanese army yesterday evening that caught many by surprise. Can you walk us through what happened at the Sarda post?
This is a very concerning development, because it involves the official Lebanese Armed Forces, or LAF, not just Hezbollah. On the evening of February 24, the Israel Defense Forces fired what they called warning shots at a newly established Lebanese army monitoring post near Sarda, in the southern border region. The Israel Defense Forces claimed that this post was built without proper coordination and posed a potential threat to their operations. However, the Lebanese government has officially called this a violation of the November 2024 ceasefire agreement that was supposed to stabilize the border. While no casualties were reported in this specific incident, it highlights how fragile the peace is. Earlier this week, the Israel Defense Forces also conducted precision strikes in Baalbek to disrupt Hezbollah's efforts to reconstitute its long-range missile capabilities. When you add the fact that Iraqi militias, specifically the Popular Mobilization Forces, have declared a general mobilization in support of Tehran, you can see how a single spark at a border post like Sarda could quickly ignite a multi-front war involving state and non-state actors.
It feels like every actor in the region is moving toward a collision course. However, there is still a diplomatic track running in parallel, almost like a race against time. We have the Geneva nuclear talks scheduled for tomorrow, February 26. Herman, what are the stakes for this third round of indirect negotiations between the United States and Iran?
The stakes could not be higher, Korn. This is essentially the 11th hour. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has stated that a historic opportunity exists for a deal that could de-escalate the entire region, potentially involving a freeze on enrichment in exchange for significant sanctions relief. However, United States officials have been much more guarded. They have explicitly warned that if there is no breakthrough in Geneva, military options remain on the table and are fully briefed to the president. There are rumors circulating in diplomatic circles that the United States has set a hard deadline of February 28 for a preliminary framework to be reached. If the February 26 talks fail, the window for a preemptive strike on Iranian nuclear or military infrastructure opens significantly. This is the definition of high-stakes diplomacy. Both sides are coming to the table with their hands on their holsters, using the military movements we discussed earlier as leverage.
Beyond the nuclear issue, there is also the ongoing question of Gaza and the West Bank, which continues to bleed into the broader regional stability. The United Nations Security Council held a briefing recently that painted a very grim picture. What is the status of the International Stabilization Force for Gaza?
The International Stabilization Force, or ISF, is a concept that came out of the Washington Summit on February 19. It is intended to be a multinational peacekeeping force that would manage security and distribution of aid in Gaza to allow for long-term reconstruction. We are seeing some significant commitments now. Indonesia has pledged 8,000 troops, which is a major development given Indonesia's status as the world's most populous Muslim majority nation. Their involvement provides a level of legitimacy that a Western-only force would lack. Other countries like Morocco, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Albania have also committed personnel. However, the United Nations Security Council is also warning about the situation in the West Bank. Officials are concerned about what they call de facto annexation due to recent Israeli land registration policies in Area C. A ministerial declaration signed by over 15 nations, including France and Saudi Arabia, was issued on February 23 and 24 condemning these policies. This creates a secondary layer of tension that complicates the broader diplomatic efforts in Geneva because it makes it harder for Arab partners to openly cooperate with Israel or the United States.
We also need to look at the broader global alliances. We have discussed the United States and its partners, but Iran is not isolated. The so-called CRINC alliance, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, seems to be flexing its muscles as well. What are we seeing in the northern Indian Ocean right now?
We are seeing the Maritime Security Belt 2026 naval drills. This is a joint exercise between Russia, China, and Iran. By participating in these drills right now, Moscow and Beijing are sending a clear signal to Washington. They are demonstrating a unified front against United States naval pressure in the region. It is a way of telling the United States that any action against Iran will have global consequences and could involve other major powers. At the same time, we are seeing an interesting shift in the Arab bloc. Saudi Arabia and Turkey, who have historically been rivals for regional leadership, are tightening their diplomatic ties. They have issued joint statements critical of both Israeli expansionism and the potential for a United States-Iran war. They are essentially hedging their bets, maintaining open channels to both Washington and Tehran to ensure they are not caught in the crossfire of a regional conflagration that would destroy their own economic diversification plans.
It is a complex web of interests. We also have to mention the economic pressure coming from the United States domestically. There was a 10% across-the-board import tariff implemented yesterday. How does that play into this Middle Eastern SITREP?
The 10% tariff implemented on February 24 has added a massive amount of volatility to global energy demand forecasts. When you combine trade protectionism with the threat of a war in the Middle East, you get a very unstable global economy. It puts additional pressure on the United States administration to find a resolution quickly, as high energy prices and trade disruptions are a recipe for domestic political trouble. If the administration cannot secure a win in Geneva, they may feel forced to take more drastic military action to clear the air and stabilize the markets, which is a dangerous feedback loop.
Herman, based on all the data we have gathered over the last 24 hours, the F-22s, the carrier groups, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Geneva deadline, what is your overall assessment of the trajectory?
The trajectory is clearly escalating and remains highly uncertain. We have moved past the point of simple posturing. The United States military buildup is now a fully mission-capable strike force. Iran's response, particularly the partial closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the large-scale combined exercises, indicates they are prepared for a calibrated but high-intensity conflict. There are three key variables to watch over the next 48 hours. First, the Geneva talks on February 26th. If they fail to produce even a basic framework, the risk of conflict spikes on February 28. Second, the Strait of Hormuz. Any sustained closure beyond a few hours will likely trigger a direct United States naval intervention to keep the shipping lanes open under Operation Prosperity Guardian or a similar mandate. Third, the friction between the Israel Defense Forces and the Lebanese army or protesters in the West Bank. Any incident that results in significant casualties could provide the spark that bypasses the diplomatic process entirely.
This is a sobering look at the current state of affairs. To summarize for our listeners, we are seeing a massive concentration of United States air and naval power in the Middle East, including F-22 Raptors and 2 carrier strike groups. Iran is responding with large-scale military drills and temporary closures of the Strait of Hormuz, which has already driven oil prices up by 7%. Diplomatic efforts are reaching a critical juncture in Geneva tomorrow, while a new international peacekeeping force is being assembled for Gaza. The situation is incredibly fluid.
One more thing to consider, corn, is the human impact. While we discuss these events in terms of troop movements, carrier groups, and oil prices, the reality on the ground for civilians in Lebanon, Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank is one of extreme anxiety. The rhetoric from all sides is hardening, and the room for neutral mediation is shrinking. We must continue to distinguish between confirmed facts, such as the arrival of the F-22s at Ovda, and the unconfirmed reports regarding specific strike timelines. At this moment, the uncertainty itself is the greatest threat to stability.
Thank you, Herman, for that detailed analysis. This has been a SITREP special episode of My Weird Prompts. We will continue to monitor the situation as it develops and bring you updates as the data warrants. For more information and updates, you can visit our website at myweirdprompts.com. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions or information you would like to share, you can reach us at show@myweirdprompts.com. We will be back with our regular programming soon, but given the gravity of these events, we felt this briefing was necessary for our community.
Stay informed and stay safe. The next 48 hours will likely determine the direction of the region for the next decade. We will be watching the Geneva talks and the naval movements in the Persian Gulf very closely.
This concludes our situational report for February 25, 2026. Thank you for listening.
Goodbye for now.
We will keep the lines open.
Indeed. The data is still coming in. We will update as soon as the situation warrants.
Thank you, Herman.
You are welcome, Korn.
This is My Weird Prompts, a human-AI collaboration.
Signing off.
Until next time.
Take care.
We are ending the transmission now.
Confirmed.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts, that's the close from sloth.